You may have heard rumblings over the last few weeks about a controversy brewing at Baylor University, something about an investigation into how they handle sexual assault allegations, particularly those related to their football team. Well, last week, those rumblings turned into...
Baylor University fired its head football coach today and demoted its president, Kenneth Starr.
A sex abuse scandal involving football players has led to sweeping changes at the school.
It's in reaction to the findings in the Pepper-Hamilton report that the school also released today.
It said 2 university administrators directly discouraged complainants from reporting, and in one case even retaliated against someone who reported a sexual assault.
University administrators retaliated against someone who reported a sexual assault. Yeah, you can go ahead and file that under sentences that should never, ever have to be printed, right next to persons having currently active diarrhea or who have had active diarrhea within the previous 14 days shall not be allowed to enter the pool water. That is a real sign that's required to be posted at every public pool in California. CA, what's going on with your butts? I read the 13-page findings of fact from that Pepper-Hamilton investigation, and it's bad. Baylor as a whole was completely unequipped to properly handle reports of sexual assault or rape from its students. But within the football program, it was even worse. The report found that the athletic department, quote, created a cultural perception that football was above the rules and that, quote, the choices made by football staff posed a risk to campus safety. Those choices included things like conducting their own untrained internal inquiries, interviewing alleged victims and/or their family members directly, protecting athletes from the school's normal student conduct processes, and helping problematic players transfer to other schools. And if that's not driving home for you just how atrocious Baylor was at helping students in times of need, listen to what happened when one student reached out to the university for help after she says she was raped by a member of the football team.
Then she asked for help from Baylor and was directed to Bethany McCraw, the chief judicial officer.
She essentially said, "Why are you here?" And I said, "Well, Tevin Elliott, I don't know if you know Tevin Elliott." She's like, "Oh yeah, and I go, he raped me." And she goes, "Yeah, you're the 6th girl to come in and tell me this."
You're the 6th girl to come in and tell me this. 6 people. You needed to... What happened after the first 5? So yeah, that's why they fired head coach Art Briles. They also, by the way, sanctioned athletic director Ian McCaw, who then resigned on Monday, and just this morning, former president Ken Starr resigned as chancellor, the position the university had allowed him to keep for some reason for 8 days. He's still going to teach law at Baylor, though, so students be on the lookout for What Not to Do 101 with Professor Starr next fall. Firing Art Briles was clearly the right move here, and yet it was still considered shocking by a lot of people. Why? Well, because as every news report this week made sure to remind you, Briles was good.
The Regents fired a brilliant cash-generating coach. Art Briles always came across as likable, and he proved himself an offensive genius.
2 Big 12 titles, a Heisman Trophy, and a brand new $250 million stadium. Those are just a few moments and things that people will remember Art Briles during his time at Baylor.
For everything that Art Briles has done for the school on the field, the success that he's had, certainly there had to be a lot of hard evidence for them to make this decision.
Seriously? Firing Briles was the right thing to do, and minor kudos to Baylor for making that call. But let's not get ahead of ourselves and call this progress. Victims, real people, your sisters, your daughters, your friends were ignored, silenced, and discredited under this man's watch, or worse, his command. And if you think that's a problem unique to Baylor, then please may I borrow your unicorn so I can fly up and meet you at the cloud paradise in which you live. It sounds lovely. This is a systemic problem in college sports. We've seen it time and again. There's so much money to be made by winning. And all the measures that schools put in place to supposedly keep awful things like what happened at Baylor from happening, they aren't working because they get in the way of winning, which gets in the way of money. Maybe you're thinking, hey, with the NFL, when we see these issues of sexual violence or domestic violence or other distractions, we look to the commissioner to make things right. I mean, he doesn't do much, but boy do we look to him. Well, in college football, there isn't a centralized commissioner to even look at, but there are conference commissioners. And for Baylor's conference, the Big 12, that man is Bobby Bowlesby. Seriously, that's his name, Bobby Bowlesby. I assume he inherited the conference from Johnny Wins-A-Lot. Let's see what Commissioner Bowlesby has to say about what's happening at Baylor.
I don't think you could find anything in our bylaws that would say the conference has any regulatory province or has any particular imperative on this. Each institution is expected to manage its own student affairs activities. Those are things that reside with the individual campuses, not with the conference. All of us would have been just fine if we didn't have to deal with it.
Right? Would have been just fine if we didn't have to deal with it. Man, what a pain. They don't pay you enough to deal with this kind of stuff, Bobby. Except that Bobby Bowlesby made $2.3 million in 2014. And that's because the best conferences have the highest paid commissioners, which means these men are basically incentivized to sweep things under the rug, like a teenage boy that's been asked to clean his room. So, okay, here's where we're at. The commissioner won't fix this because it'll cost him money. The schools won't fix this because it'll cost them money. And we have to accept that that's the case. That's how it's always going to be. So we've got two options. We can either keep pretending these people are going to wake up one morning and be like, oh, wow, ethics. I should have those. Or we can think like them and find a way to make investigating players for alleged sexual misconduct beneficial instead of a big old burden. And it's this line of thinking, this craziness that has led me to what I believe is the solution. Is it logical? No. Is anything about this situation logical? No. So here it is. To make this as easy as possible to understand, I'm going to draw this up like a play for you because football is everything. So let's say responsibility is the football. We've got conferences handing it off to individual schools, and then we've got individual schools repeatedly fumbling the out of it. So what does that mean? That means the ball, responsibility, is going to end up in the hands of the opposing team. Huh? You see where I'm going with this? Enter outside investigators. It's a person hired by a team, paid by a team to investigate the players on all the other teams. Competition is what drives all of this in the first place, right? So let's use that to fix this thing. Whichever team catches the other teams doing bad more will win more games. All right, let's say your school's playing Baylor on Saturday, right? Playing Baylor. And their star defensive lineman has been accused, 6 times of sexually assaulting a student on campus, but he hasn't been suspended. That should infuriate you for a number of reasons, but I give up on trying to convince you of most of them. He shouldn't be on the field. And if he isn't, you've got a better chance of winning. So your outside investigator follows up on all those outstanding complaints filed against that player that are just sitting there at the other school. Boom, he's suspended, you win. And if you're thinking the NCAA is not going to be cool with this, well, I say you're wrong, because the NCAA loves not doing and they don't have to do in this scenario. Look, is it a perfect plan? No. Are there flaws in it? Yes, actually an alarming amount. But at least it's a plan, and as ridiculous as it may be, it's no more ridiculous than whatever the we're doing now. So, you're welcome.